What if a food crisis starts before you see it? A food crisis does not begin with empty supermarket shelves. It starts quietly, in the fields, fertilizer plants, shipping lanes, and energy markets long before most people notice. A food crisis is about access and affordability, not just shortages. Food can exist, but if prices rise or supply chains break, millions may simply not be able to afford it. By the time the impact reaches households, the damage is already done. What triggers every food crisis? History reveals that food crises tend to follow certain patterns. In 2008 and 2009, a combination of soaring oil prices, biofuel mandates, export restrictions, and depleted grain reserves triggered the first major crisis of the modern era. The next spike came in 2011 and 2012, driven by droughts in Russia and the United States, rising energy costs, and market speculation. In 2022, the war in Ukraine disrupted grain and fertilizer exports, sending prices to record highs. These crises rarely result from crop failure alone. They are triggered by energy shocks, geopolitical disruptions, and trade choke points. What really happens when food prices surge? When a food crisis strikes, its effects cascade through society. Food prices rise fastest in low-income countries, where families spend up to 70% of their income on food. Households may cut meals, switch to less nutritious diets, or sell vital assets just to get by. Governments often impose export bans to protect domestic supply, but this can shrink global supply and push prices even higher. Social unrest and political instability often follow. Hunger increases, not because food does not exist, but because people cannot access or afford it. Why food crises happen at all? Modern food systems rest on four fragile pillars. First, energy dependency. Farming relies on diesel fuel and natural gas, making it vulnerable to energy price spikes. Second, fertilizer concentration. A handful of countries control most nitrogen, phosphate, and potash supplies, so disruptions have global consequences. Third, climate variability. Weather events like El Niño and La Niña can devastate harvests across continents. Fourth, trade choke points. Narrow shipping routes, such as the Strait of Hormuz, account for most of the world's trade in fertilizers and grains. A shock to any pillar ripples through the entire system. What shocks are driving the 2026 food crisis? In 2026, three shocks are colliding. First, conflict in the Middle East has closed the Strait of Hormuz, slashing global fertilizer shipments by 90%. Second, fertilizer prices are soaring. Ammonia in the United States Gulf has jumped from $565 per metric ton to $725 in just weeks, while European urea prices have risen by 47%. Third, El Niño is developing, with a 61% chance of emerging by August, and a 1 in 3 chance of becoming strong or super. El Niño often brings drought to South America, East Africa, Southeast Asia, and Australia, threatening harvests and worsening food insecurity. Which countries will be hit first? Not all countries face the same risk. Import-dependent fertilizer users, such as India, Brazil, Southeast Asia, and parts of Africa, are highly exposed. India, for example, imports over 40% of its urea and nearly half of its diammonium phosphate from the Middle East. Countries with short planting windows, like the Philippines and much of Southeast Asia, are vulnerable if fertilizer is unavailable during those critical months. In places where people spend 60 to 80% of their income on food, even small price increases can push millions into food insecurity. Are countries ready for the next food shock? Governments are acting, but their options are limited. Some are building or modernizing grain reserves. India has secured fertilizer stocks through advance purchases and long-term supply agreements. Many countries are subsidizing fertilizer costs to help farmers. And the United Nations is working to broker safe passage for fertilizer shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. However, these measures mostly address prices rather than supply shortages. What is happening on farms right now? The crisis is unfolding in real time. In the United States, a recent survey found that 70% of farmers cannot afford all the fertilizer they need. Southern farmers are particularly hard hit, with nearly 80% reporting shortfalls. Rice growers face the worst situation, with 88% lacking funds to cover full fertilizer rates. In Europe, rising costs are forcing farmers to switch from corn to soybeans or reduce corn acreage altogether. In the Philippines, rice production is set to drop to its lowest level in 6 years due to high fertilizer prices and El Niño-induced drought. What happens next in a food crisis? If farmers cut fertilizer use, now global crop yields will fall over the next year. Lower yields mean less food on the market and higher supermarket prices, especially in low-income countries where food inflation hits hardest. Fertilizer companies are already warning of possible demand destruction, as high prices force farmers to reduce purchases. Trade flows are shifting, with food exporters redirecting shipments and some markets facing shortages. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization reports that food prices are rising again, reversing months of decline. Why is policy failing to stop this? Policymakers know a crisis is unfolding, but their options are limited and slow to take effect. The United States is promising new investments in domestic fertilizer production, but new plants take more than a year to come online. The European Union faces a perfect storm of rising costs, carbon border adjustments, and low grain prices. The United Nations is negotiating for fertilizer shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, but talks have stalled. Even India's relative stability is temporary. By the time policies take effect, the next harvest has already been determined by choices made today. Why should this matter to you right now? The next food crisis is not a distant threat. It is happening now. The shocks began in early 2026 and are shaping the food supply for the coming year. By the time shortages or price spikes reach your grocery store, it will be too late to change course. The real challenge is to act now. Build resilience and protect the most vulnerable before the crisis deepens.